Rare is the wine that spends more time in a barrel. Rare are the vineyards that flourish in a more harsh and unforgiving land. Rare is the grape that is harvested by hand and crushed by foot. The wine is port, and this is Ports to Remember. A discovery of port wine from the grapes to the glass. Come, savor the wine. Harvest the grapes. Get to know the place and the people whose lives have been wrapped in the joy of port wine for generations. Join your host, wine writer and connoisseur Tony Aspler, in this celebration of Ports to Remember.
Anyone who takes on the responsibility of growing grapes in this wild land has got to be strong. And Donna Antonia Ferreira, who owned many properties in the Douro at the end of the 19th century, was a tough lady, an amazing woman in a man's world. Stay with me. Ports to Remember will be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Ports to Remember. I'm Tony Aspler here in this spectacular setting with my old friend Vito Olazabal, who is the chairman of Ferreira Port. And we're sitting on the balcony with this spectacular view of the Douro and Oporto behind us. And you have to work in these conditions.
I try to. I've tried for about 35 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So,
now, Donna Antonia was probably the most famous of your ancestors. Can you tell me about her?
she was my great-great-grandmother, but in fact she was not the founder. She was already the fourth generation of a family that started to commercialize port in the 18th century, in 1751. But then it was Don Antonio who gave a great push to the family business. She was an outstanding woman. She did something that a lady was not supposed to do. She worked very hard all during her life. She married twice, she became widowed twice, so she had to conduct their business in a very active way. And besides that, she still remembered because she was greatly concerned by the fate of the people in the Douro, and she founded many different charities, she opened roads, she built schools, and so she's still remembered as a first-rate figure of the Douro and the northern country of Portugal.
And of course she's on your label as well in one of your ports.
Yes, our 8 years old port is called Don Antonia as an homage to her.
Well, I think it's about time for us to actually sample this 10-year-old Tony from Ferreira with some roasted almonds from the Douro. Cheers.
Cheers. For good health.
Cheers. Donna Antonia loved this countryside. In the mid-1800s, when Donna Antonia Ferreira came here, this was a remote and barren wilderness. She was widowed with a young daughter, but rather than retreat into widowhood, she became a driving force in the port trade and an extraordinarily wealthy entrepreneur. Part of Donna Antonia's resolve lay in her religious conviction. The bell still calls the Quinta de Porto to Mass. In the chapel that retains its 19th century elaboration, I could feel the sense of awe and devotion these surroundings would inspire. Donna Antonia herself was also an inspiration. For her, the people of the Douro built roads, cleared land, and planted vineyards that are still producing today. It was back-breaking work. It still is. Let me show you. This land of rock is the hardest in the world in which to grow grapes, and you'll understand why in a minute. Fernando, good luck.
Obrigado.
It may seem strange to wish a planter good luck, but in the Douro Valley, Planting is a vigorous task, even in an established vineyard. To plant a new root, you dig through the soil and into the rock with heavy steel. What little soil there is forms only a thin layer over the schist. Schist is a layered rock, like sandstone, but it's as hard as granite. But the roots must be able to penetrate much deeper. To get them started, you often need dynamite, and it's a ticklish job. The measure of dynamite has to fracture the rock without disturbing the terrace walls. Dynamite, just to give the grapevines a good start. But once they're established, they'll produce for generations. And if it takes this much effort to plant the vine stalks, imagine building the terraces and planting the vineyards in the 250,000 hectares of this entire port region. On some of the steeper slopes, the terrace walls supporting the grapevines are 5, even 10 meters tall, all piled up by hand, one rock at a time. Walking in the vineyards with Vito Elizabeth, I discover why the grapes grow so well in these rocks.
Well, this is the rocky subsoil of the Douro, schist. It's a rock which has layers, and in this area the layers are disposed vertically, which is a good thing because the water infiltrates and it's kept there, and it allows the vines to feed there during summertime. This is also a rock that is being used to build the walls, to sustain the earth, and in some cases they leave holes that in the past had vines there growing on the sides of the wall. It's not done anymore.
Once the vines are established, their roots delve even deeper. They grow down 10 meters or more, seeking the cool reservoirs of stored winter rains. With their toes in the cool water, the vines can withstand the searing summer heat of the surface to produce perfect port grapes. On their way back from lunch, a team of pickers, called a roga, break into a spontaneous dance, inviting me to join in. I think she wanted me to lead. A few minutes later, at the grapevines, the women cut and the men carry, talking of past vintages and harvests. And they show me how it's done. I wish I'd known how to say left-handed in Portuguese.
Oh, that's a good bunch. That's a good bunch. That's a good bottle of port right there coming up.
Their grandfathers may not have used a plastic pail, but they still had to carry a load of grapes up the steep hills to where they're pressed. A word of warning: when you visit the Douro during harvest, don't ask how heavy those baskets of grapes are. I felt as if I was going to tip backwards.
Okay, now where? Okay, this is really heavy and coming uphill. And these guys, they do it 80, 100 times a day. Oh boy.
From sun to sun, the harvest continues till all the grapes are picked and crushed. The work is hard, but it seems to me that everyone has a good time, and the laughter is infectious even if you don't know the words to their songs. Some vineyards are more than a century old. Some of the roads much older.
This is the old Roman road from Braganza to Villa Real, and across this old Roman bridge, winemakers used to bring their pipes of port drawn by ox cart to market.
These villages have stood since medieval times, a testament perhaps to the builders. and to the strength of the Douro Valley rock. People live in houses their families have owned for centuries, and in many ways their lives have not changed either. Their days are measured by the growth of the vines and the harvest of the grapes. The lives of their forefathers were changed by Dona Antonia. Today, in these rural villages, Dona Antonia is revered. They still call her Ferreira, as if they know her personally, more than a century after her death. Here, they don't even ask for a glass of port, they ask for a Ferreira. Stay with me. When Ports to Remember returns, we'll follow the production of cork from the tree to the bottle.
Welcome back to Ports to Remember. I'm in the tasting room of Ferreira, and with me is the company's production manager and enologist, Jose Maria Suarez Franco. Now, we have in front of us your complete line of wines. Let's have a look at the 10-year-old. This is a 10-year-old tawny. Tell me about this. It's gorgeous color. It looks really deep in color for a tawny.
Yes, it's deep because, as I told you at the beginning, what we try to have in our blends is a good balance between the oxidation character coming by the aging and the small quantity of fruitiness. So we use wines between 8 and 15 years of aging to have always an average of 10 years old.
Now, there's a question I want to put to you about your cork, well, the corks in general. Of course, this is the cork one sees in wine bottles. It's the cork you put into vintage port. But this cork, the stopper, what is the difference? Why do you use two corks?
We use two corks because, as you know, the white and tawny ports, they are aged by oxidation in the casks, so they are prepared to receive the oxygen. So when you open a bottle of a tawny port, it's not a problem if you close it after, and you can drink the wine. It's very similar 5 to 8 days, so there is not a problem because the wine is prepared to receive the oxygen. On the other side, in the LBVs and in vintage ports, we need to have another one, more compact, to be sure that the maturation of the wine in the bottle during the aging makes in the good hand. So there is another thing that is important, is to be sure that when you open a bottle of LBV or a vintage port, the contact with the oxygen is so strong to the wine that you must drink it immediately. So here it's not necessary to have a cork to close the bottle after drink, because you must drink the wine immediately.
Now, I was always taught that when you pull the cork from a bottle of wine or a bottle of vintage port, you threw it away because you didn't need it anymore.
Yes, in the vintage port it's true, in the LBV also, but not.
For the wine industry, nothing can replace cork for aging wine in bottles. Most of the world's cork production is in Portugal. For centuries, bark has been harvested from Portugal's oak forests without harming the trees. A perfect renewable resource. Cork oak trees can produce usable bark for 150 to 200 years. Once every 10 years or so, a layer of bark is stripped from the trees, always by hand. This is a wealth not to be wasted. The cork is destined for many different uses, but there's one that I'm most interested in. The resilience and closed cell structure of cork makes it an ideal stopper for wine bottles. While the cork harvest hasn't changed, the production of the wine cork has. We visit one of the bright new factories of Grupo Amorim, one of the biggest cork producers in the world. They turn out millions each year. Corks for vintage and LBV ports, and cork stoppers for tawny and ruby cork. The volume is prodigious. Portugal exports 170,000 tons of cork a year. In fact, there is more cork exported than port wine. Still, the most fun you can have with a cork is taking it out of a bottle, as I'm about to do in the Ferreira Lodge. 1815.
Yes,
is it really
it's-
1815?
It's the famous Waterloo vintage.
Can I see it?
Of course, yes. Let's pick up a bottle.
Oh, 1815. Napoleon. Excellent. Now that you have it in your hand, let's open it.
Yes, of course.
Really?
Sounds good.
Yes? I couldn't believe my host would actually open a bottle of 1815. He even surprised me by having his sommelier, José Maria, on hand to do the honors. I'm going to pass this over to you because I don't want to drop it. Oh, after all, it is my birth year. Now, you're taking the tongs, they're red hot, and around the neck, it looks like an instrument of torture. Oh, bravo. It smells good.
Sure does.
Okay, let me give you some light to help you decant. Now, the moment of truth. Let's have a look and see just what color this ancient wine is. 1815. It's the first time it's been out of that bottle, what, in 170 odd years? Yeah. Good heavens. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that color. Let's pour some in the glass and get a smell of this too. This is the oldest wine I think I've ever had. 1815. Isn't that gorgeous? Well, I hope you're not going to have to send this one back.
Hope not.
Wow. Thank you very much. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm drinking history. The Battle of Waterloo.
Still alive.
It's still alive. Has a nice raisiny character. And still very sweet.
But it's drier than old tonics of today. But you know, of course, the fact that there is some sugar helps the wine to resist to the aging, you know. And also, these wines have 20 degrees of alcohol.
Yes.
So they can live for ages.
That is amazing.
One despairing thing is that we are so sure that all the wines around would outlive us.
Well, this is a privilege, and thank you very much for sharing it with me. 1815 in a glass. Amazing. For as long as port has been produced, coopers have been making barrels. Ferreira's cooperage dates back to the 1800s. Today, it looks like a barrel hospital. The air is filled with the scent of old oak.
Hi. What are you doing here?
The cooper's benches and tools haven't changed for generations. This is part of a barrel he's rejuvenating. After a few years, crystals from the wine inhibit the barrel's ability to let in oxygen. But by scraping and refitting, the barrel is good for a few more vintages. Leaky barrels are also repaired with new staves. The skill with the draw shaves on oak staves has been passed down as well. In fact, this barrel stave might have been carved by this cooper's father or grandfather. This is one of the very few cooperages left in the port region. The barrels may be used in port production for a century or more. And when they've finished with the port, they're shipped to distilleries in Scotland to age some single malt whiskies. Here, once again, I notice the contrast that is prevalent in port wine production. The fire is like the summer heat in the Douro. The water is like the winter rain. The right amount of each shapes the barrel just as the seasons produce the grapes for a vintage wine. Now let's go back to the Douro Valley, to Quinta de Porto, where I sit down with a group of port enthusiasts from Spain to a wonderful lunch. Beginning, of course, with a glass of Ferreira's white port. The 5-course meal includes soup, salad, duck and rice, cheese, and a wonderful creme brulee, followed by a glass of vintage port, Ferreira's 1982. The creme brulee is made in the usual way, but they have a great little cooking tool. It's heated on the burner and held on top of the set custard to burn the sugar. After that meal, I could barely walk to a comfortable chair. Well, it's a good time to end this visit to the Douro. Stay with me. Ports to Remember will be right back. Port is great to have with food as well as a drink to have by itself. Now, white port is wonderful with almonds. The Portuguese actually grill these almonds and they put salt on it and they nibble them with their white port, and that is absolutely delicious, especially when this is lightly chilled. You've been watching Ports to Remember. Join me for the next program in the series.